There were at least 3 enigmatic agricultural revolutions. The first was the Neolithic agricultural revolution. The main crop was wheat, and the main crops were cereals, similar to all next agricultural revolutions. The agricultural revolutions simplified. The Neolithic and the next agricultural revolution's main crops were cereals. Cereals were most used, because amongst many others they are high-yielding. The cultivation of cereals and the domestication of animals led to the emergence of cities and population growth. Cereals, contrary to agroforests, need tilling. Tilling has a negative impact on soils. Because tilling makes soils lose their organic content and degenerates them, at least if the organic content is not carefully restored regularly and/or of high stability. Here and later again, we will argue a few important things that are associated with the agricultural revolutions, but which are seldom or never mentioned as being possible associations. Some or all agricultural revolutions, as certain empires, were ended and/or interrupted by epidemics amongst domesticated animals and humans, which significantly reduced their populations, and/or led to a wide variety of collapses and/or conflicts. Some or all agricultural revolutions were followed by warming and climate changes, like for instance droughts, with at least the latter having negative impacts on agriculture, and altogether about everything that developing agriculture brought forward. This is the second association we mention, but also this association is not recognized, and seldom or never mentioned by others, this as being a possible association, that we need to observe, and put in the larger context. Some or all epidemics are foregone by malnutrition. This is the third important or even essential association we mention. While this one is possibly somehow mentioned, this too is seldom or never mentioned by others, as being yet another possible association, that we need to observe, and put in the larger context. This said, we are once more in an agricultural revolution, although a mature revolution, this because 30% of agricultural land already is degenerated worldwide. We argue, and some others could argue that we are malnutritioned once more. If one would look at the amount spent on drugs bought and taken to prevent and/or control osteoporosis, some could conclude that we are relatively malnutritioned, possibly even like never before. We are possibly the first to put in perspective this perhaps too simplified conclusion. But if our foods were really fully adequate, why is it that we seem to need so many supplements, including vitamins, and even probiotics, especially since these are already systematically and artificially added during processing, this to a whole range of foods? Further, we just suffered a pandemic for several years, that did not fully came to an end yet, and yet again a disease branded Disease X, as well as certain so-called breakthroughs of endemic zoonoses, seem both to be on the horizon. This seems to be more crises, as what could be considered typical, this at least so since World War II, the efficient and hitherto successful surveillance and control strategy of our health organizations, and the associated enigmatic and very significant invention of antibiotics and antimicrobials in general. If one looks at the rise of all forms of cognitive decline or rather degenerative diseases, in combination with a problematic AMR, we humans for sure became more vulnerable to diseases and epidemics. If it weren't for our still effective antimicrobials and still very well organized and effective surveillance and control strategies firmly in place, our situation could have been quite dire already by now. But of course, we are not out of the symbolic woods yet, especially we and our health organizations will have to deal as soon as possible with our ongoing AMR challenges.